Bueno, vamos a partir este primer webinar conjunto entre hcmfront y la Fundación Data Observatory. Tenemos el placer hoy de tener a un gran speaker, Ryan McClarren, que ya vamos a presentar formalmente, pero primero voy a presentarme yo. Soy Carlos Jerez, presidente del Directorio y fundador de hcmfront, la solución integral de gestión de personas. Hasta hace poco fui decano en la Facultad de Ingeniería y Ciencias de la Universidad Adolfo Ibáñez, y actualmente también soy director ejecutivo de la Fundación Data Observatory. Como les dije, esta charla no se trata de mí, básicamente nosotros tenemos el placer de tener a Ryan McClarren, que aquí voy a presentar ahora, como el speaker principal, de un tema que vemos en múltiples aristas de las organizaciones, de la sociedad, de gobierno, a nivel nacional e internacional, que es cómo los datos nos ayudan a tomar mejores decisiones. Y en este caso, cómo los datos nos permiten hacer mejores decisiones o planes de acción en gestión de personas. Así que, siguiente slide. Vamos a presentar a Ryan McClarren. Voy a presentarlo en español, así que Ryan ya sabe lo que estoy diciendo, así que Ryan no va a estar nervioso. Es profesor asociado de la Universidad de Notre Dame, del Departamento de Ingeniería Mecánica Aeroespacial. Si bien ha hecho eso, ha aplicado técnicas de simulación de datos en múltiples contextos para entender, optimizar sistemas. Fundó la startup Farsight, que trabajó en temas de retail, en temas de salud, en transporte, incluso en lo que es financiamiento de empresas, y ha tenido apariciones en Wall Street Journal, Forbes y otras revistas de pequeña calidad, como aquellas. Siguiente slide, por favor. Tiene entre sus múltiples éxitos, tener también varios libros asociados a cómo el aprendizaje de máquina, que es una de las técnicas que utiliza en el procesamiento de datos, se puede utilizar para cuantificar incertidumbre o realizar predicciones. Suena medio esotérico, no va a usar tarot, sino va a usar ciencia, pero ciencia que tenga un sentido, y en este contexto que tenga sentido a lo que es la gestión de personas. Siguiente slide. Bueno, y antes de unirse a la Universidad de Notre Dame, en el 2017 fue profesor de Ingeniería Nuclear en la Universidad de Texas A&M, y también trabajó en el Laboratorio Nacional de Los Álamos, en el grupo de Ciencias Físicas y Computacionales. Como ustedes pueden ver, este es un speaker que es bastante atípico para la comunidad de gestión de personas, y creemos que va a dar una mirada muy interesante de cómo estas técnicas se aplican en cosas que parecieran tan sofisticadas como las que he mencionado, tienen sentido desde una perspectiva de personas. Así que adelante, Ryan, y espero que tengan todos la ocasión de disfrutar de esta charla y también de hacer preguntas al final de la vez. Así que adelante.
Thank you, Carlos. So I'm going to be talking today about how we can use data and how we can use it in people management, and not just in the idea of how we understand how people management and HR works, but how you can actually use it to make action plans and how it can improve your enterprise. Next slide. So as Carlos mentioned a little bit in my background, I've been working on using data analysis techniques to understand how computer simulation can be used to make predictions and understand the uncertainty. But that also can be translated into the business world, and I've used that expertise to help companies such as retailers like J. Crew and Dick's Sporting Goods, as well as White Castle and Kroger. And in the past, as a way to demonstrate how things work in a more popular, I've done things like the Oscars or analyze the American football draft. And so in all of this work, from the scientific side all the way to the pop culture side, I've encountered big data and how to use it fruitfully. So yeah, as Carlos mentioned, in Forbes and the Wall Street Journal, I've been quoted based on some of this work, and both on predicting the Oscars. One year we were actually the best predictors of the Oscars, and then the Wall Street Journal said something about analyzing sports data. Next slide. Okay, so one question I get asked a lot, and is what do I mean by big data? And really, it's a buzzword. And so in my humble opinion, oftentimes when you see the word big data, it's an indication that someone says, oh, there's some magic or something, and it involves data. And so if you actually look at what some of the definitions are, for example, Google calls it extremely large data sets that may be analyzed computationally to reveal patterns, trends, and associations, especially when it involves human behavior and interactions. And that's kind of an important point, because this isn't just data from some scientific sensor or data that's automatically collected based on simple transactions, let's say, but also when you have human behavior and how humans interact with each other. Forbes magazine had a more perhaps humorous way of thinking about it when they say that it's new and ginormous and scary, or it's something that's really good that can help, but it's not really quite sure what it is. Next slide. IBM also had an important report several years ago about how it's the data that's being generated around us, and they use the 3 V's here to describe the velocity, volume, and variety. Each of at least one of those things being big. And then the consulting firm McKinsey also has a definition, and their definition is more about how it would get used, and it's bigger than what you can typically access and analyze with simple software tools. Next slide. Okay, so the working definition that I'm going to use in this talk is that it refers to the bleeding edge of data analysis for a particular field. We're talking about all the data that's collected in that particular area, and it's a size that cannot be handled by standard tools, and it's not typically analyzed or used practically before. And there's some sort of magic behind it, because that's why we're using this vague term of big data. So the idea here is we have data that there's a lot of it, and it may be difficult to use, but there's value that can be extracted out of it. And I think that those are some of the important takeaways of what we mean by big data. Okay, so another term that we see a lot is data science. And here we're talking about a blend of computer science, statistics, signal processing, mathematics, engineering. All of these things come together to deal with things like big data. Okay, so this goes beyond just statistics and analyzing data. It's how do we go from the collection of data to actually making insight from it? That is where data science lies. And then there's a couple other things like analytics and predictive analytics. So analytics is a standard, a dashboard that tells you something about a business, a unit, or something like that tells you what the current state of things is. And then predictive analytics is a way of saying, let's put some statistics on top of that dashboard to maybe forecast trends or understand what's going on inside of that dashboard. Next slide. Okay. Also, as I mentioned, what makes big data to one person or company or field is different than it would be for another one. So, for example, Facebook, although they're now called Meta, I guess, what is big data to them is a really huge amount of data involving all of their users and how they interact. If you're a farmer growing crops in a field, you actually have big data at your fingertips, but it's a much smaller amount of data because you might have weather data. You may have sensors in the field for crop moisture and all of that. But that could be large for you, and there's a lot to process, but it's small compared to what, say, Facebook has. In science and engineering, it changes as well. You could be getting gigabytes a second or gigabytes a day. But in all of these cases, usually the idea is that you're collecting more data than you can analyze simply by one person on one computer somewhere. So typically you'll need some sort of platform or something that to enable you to get the insights out of that data. So as I mentioned before, we have velocity, variety, and volume in the data to make it quote unquote big. So velocity is the speed at which the data is created. So when we have a lot of people interacting with a website or platform, that's one way that you can generate data very quickly. If you have a sensor that's taking data every millisecond, that's also a way that you can be creating big data. And then volume is just the amount of data that you have, large size. And variety, I forgot that one. Variety is that you have different kinds of data. So you have structured data, maybe data you could typically see in a database or a spreadsheet, text, images, audio. So if you have audio recordings of the phone interactions at a call center, that could be something that would be there. Text data, maybe you're analyzing email traffic or sentiment on social media. All these kind of things that you're bringing different types of data together is also a hallmark of big data. And it's always changing. So what was big 5 years ago may not be big today, just because the tools and the amount of data we're collecting all the time. We're always getting more data. And these 3 V's are always larger and larger. Okay, but one thing that I think is important to understand is that data doesn't need to be big to be powerful. Even relatively small data sets, when looked at properly and using the tools of big data, can be very powerful for a given enterprise. And I hope to show that a little bit in some of my remarks here. Okay. One thing that I've seen in my experience is that a lot of people talk about big data and how it could help their enterprise, but there's usually more talk than there is use of it. Part of that is because people understand that we have this data about what's going on in our business, with our customers, with our employees. We understand that there's important information in the data that we've collected. However, it's not easy to do that. It's hard to find the experts that you could bring onto your team to do that sort of analysis. And because of that, people keep on collecting more and more data. They're building more and more haystacks, but no one's looking for the needles in the haystacks. Okay, so even by just extracting small data sets and doing some analysis on them, you can actually make an impact on a business. So, for example, if you have a platform where you can easily do this analysis or access what's coming out of your data, it can have a big impact. Okay, so how is this actually going to work with the particular topic of our discussion today about people management? So HR professionals are used to getting reports and dashboards that show the current state of the enterprise. So here's where we are now. Here's how many employees we have. Here's their productivity. All of those sorts of things. Getting a picture of where things are currently in the enterprise. But the best insights are often come from predicting the trends and saying, okay, here's how things have been changing. How can we use this to improve our key indicators of success? And so what we're thinking about here when we're making plans or looking forward, it's the difference between having a thermometer that tells me the temperature outside and the weather forecast that tells me what's going to happen tomorrow. Of course, we all know that weather forecasts can be wrong, but the idea is that do I care what the weather's like now, or do I want to know what it's like tomorrow? And when you're dealing with business, it's even more complicated because it's not tomorrow that you care about. It's the next week, next quarter, next year. That is the horizon at which you need to make decisions. Next slide. Okay, so building on historical trends is really just the beginning. You need to make predictions. So just because one metric in your company has been rising or falling doesn't mean that's going to happen forever. Okay, so we have our dashboards, we have reports that may show the historical trends and what the maybe year over year change, month over month, whatever the right time frame is for that particular indicator. With big data and machine learning, so knowing everything that's going on in your company, taking the data and then extracting insight using machine learning, one can make predictions. In this case, we're talking about predictive analytics to forecast into the future what's going to happen. So we're not just taking what's happened over the past, the historical data and extrapolating, saying, extending the line forward. We're saying, okay, given everything that's happening in the enterprise, all the data we have, how do we use that to then say, how is this possibly going to change in the future? So if we know how workplace satisfaction among the employees of an organization is helpful, but how it's going to change in the future is more powerful. That's what we're getting at here. So if you want to make that predictions, you need a way to integrate all of the data that you have that you could use to make this. Okay, so that's why I say here a platform where all this data is available to you is important. So for example, if you have data from employee performance and you have data from satisfaction and absenteeism and all that, if those are all existing in different places, you need to be able to bring all those together to make predictions. And then you also would need the ability to analyze that and apply machine learning, for example, to make forecasts. So bringing all those together is really what you need to do to make predictions about the future. But that's not just what you want to do. So so for example, in HR, you don't just want to say, okay, here's how things are changing. You want to say, here are the interventions we can make. Here's what we should do to change this, to turn the knobs, to adjust the performance to get where we want it to be. So let's say that there's a key indicator trending in the wrong direction. And you know that there are a series of interventions you can take to try to change that, to make it move in the direction you want it to go. So I have a list of things I can do. So what plan should I make? What actions should I take? And so the question is, if I take this action, what will it be? Okay, so you want the tools to predict what the outcome of a change will be. So if I increase communication with managers, can I decrease absenteeism, or whatever the possible interventions you can take as an HR professional your team can take. And so what you want to be able to see is, if I do this, then this will happen and this will change my indicator. Okay, so once you know once you can analyze all the possible interventions you can take and how that's going to affect your that indicator that you're trying to change, then you can use that to create an action plan. Well, if we do this, we predict that this is going to happen, and so we can use that to generate our action plan and take what are the best steps forward. Okay, so as you know, what the best plan, the plan to change the behavior or improve outcomes is, it can be a complicated path. And so on the previous slide, I was talking about, okay, if I have a list of things I can do, what is the outcome of each of those things? That's an important set of predictions that you can use to craft a plan. Well, because of the complicated interactions between the different interventions you can take, it may be better if you could just say, okay, what does, based on the data I have and any types of forecasts I can make, what is the optimal path for me? So you can actually use optimization to say, okay, given all these interventions I can take, here is what the data and the analysis and the machine learning suggests. Here is the proper action plan. Okay, so do this to get the outcome you want. However, that's not where things end, because we're not computers aren't super intelligent yet, and they can't tell us exactly what to do. We still need to use our brains and your expertise as an HR professional, for example, to say, okay, does this plan make sense? And what about it needs to be tailored specifically for my company, for this particular area of my company, bringing all that information to bear. Here's a plan that is suggested that's going to give us the outcome we want, but let's also make sure that we don't just blindly follow it. And so, but one of the benefits of this is that it can actually make you and your team more powerful and more productive, because the simple interventions and the simple plans that you would normally make in a routine way, these are automatically generated for you. And the bigger challenges that you may not be able to have automatic plans for, that's where you can be focusing your effort. So the time of your team is a valuable commodity, and you want to spend that on the tough decisions and not the easy ones. So that's one of the things that the automatic action plans can help with. Next. Okay, so as a simple case study, let's say that in an enterprise there are vacancies that occur, and you would like to say who else in the company could be someone that could be perhaps promoted into this position from another unit. So as a way to have internal movement of people between roles based on what they're most suitable for. And so the question is, how do I identify those best candidates and create a list of them and try to encourage them to apply to move into this other role? So if we have big data and machine learning all together, either a platform or another analysis, you could combine, information about that position, what its requirements are for that role, as well as who has been successful in those kind of roles before, and who currently in the company, in the existing workforce, has those skills and the performance that would indicate they would be a suitable person for this vacancy. So you combine this list and automatically get a target list of potential hires based on suitability and these criteria that are automatically indicated based on their past performance. And then your team can evaluate just that list before encouraging the people to apply. Instead of looking at everybody in the company that could possibly be a good fit, you have a targeted list, and you can spend your time evaluating that instead of everybody. And then also, if you have with that information and your data, you could also combine that with potential applicants outside for using a site where people have posted their CVs to say, okay, here I'm looking for a job in this. You could automatically analyze those CVs to say, okay, who is someone that we can encourage to apply from outside the organization? When we bring all this data together and apply machine learning to it, and to make these targeted insights to find the person for that vacancy automatically. Okay. So the last part of my prepared remarks, I want to say, okay, when you're making an action plan, you want to combine your data from history and use technology to predict, optimize, and evaluate your enterprise. When you have the tools and the data in the right place, and this is often the hardest part of any sort of big data or automation, is how do I get the data in the right place so the analysis can be made and then I can make decisions based on what comes out. What we're doing here is we're going beyond just reports and dashboards. You need reports and dashboards to understand where things are currently. But if I want to know how do I change things to make it go forward, I need to be able to make predictions based on my data and machine learning. And I can get automatic and optimized plans using that. And then that's where you can apply your business expertise to those plans and refine them. And so you can spend your time having the biggest impact on the enterprise rather than spend your time on on smaller details. Now you can be applying things to the big picture. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So, bueno, vamos a dar por cerrado. Thank you, Ryan, again for this time. Muchísimas gracias a todos por participar. Vamos a seguir respondiendo las preguntas a través de este documento que les haremos llegar con todo el material, ¿ya? Nuevamente agradecer al Data Observatory por su participación y organización de este evento. A hcmfront también, solución integral de gestión de personas, ya abarcando todo el ciclo de vida del colaborador, ya por estar orientándonos en todo lo que tiene que ver con términos de datos y cómo esto nos permite apoyar nuestra gestión y nuestro día a día en torno a la gestión de personas, ¿ya? Así que muchísimas gracias a todos por su tiempo, que tengan un excelente día, ¿ya? Y bueno, excelente término de semana y lo que queda de semana. Un abrazo grande a todos.